Now joining me virtually from the University of Ahmadu Bello University, Zaria, is Professor Muhammed Muttaka, who will join us to further have our conversation this morning. Good morning, Professor.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
I can hear you loud and clear.
That's good.
All right, thank you for joining us on the program this morning. He's a professor of economics from the Department of Economics over at the Ahmadu Bello University, Zaria. Now, Professor, before we get to our conversation for the day, this 15% import duty supposedly coming up by the federal government, or rather not supposedly, actually coming up by the federal government, what's your take on it? Do you think it's actually going to help with Nigeria's economy, cost of living? Will it actually help?
Yeah, you see, on the bottom line of economic thinking is that when you put a ad valorem tax on any products, it means that you are encouraging local production. And that local production will eventually help to grow your industry. But in our own case, do we have the local industry that will meet up the capacity or the consumption capacity that it requires for Nigerians? If those companies, those industry have the capacity to produce, then it will be beneficial and indeed will reduce the cost of production within that level. But in our own case, up to now, we will not be able to establish the capacity of both NNPC and the recent Dangote refinery. If those NNPC refineries and Dangote refinery are able to meet a local demand of the products, then that policy is good because it will encourage the productions of the petroleum product within the country, and that will enhance job and enhance income. But I doubt much whether, because that industry is shrewd with high level of secrecy, they will tell you that Warri refinery is functioning, Kaduna refinery will come out end of there. But it's a long story. We are not sure those companies are working or what happened to Dangote refinery in terms of meeting the adequate requirements of the country in terms of the petroleum product. So in a nutshell, it means that if the local refinery and the local production will meet up the demands of the country, it will be a better policy because it will encourage employment, job creations, and other multiplier effect from that production process. But once that does not provide the local content, there must be importation. It means the price of that product will rise. And once it rises, it also affects the well-being and social condition of Nigerians, of which is deteriorated over the years.
All right, thank you so much. The federal government has come out yesterday to say that they are actually thinking over and mulling over the idea of selling the Nigerian refineries to aid competition. So maybe when they do that, maybe then they could probably impose that tariff or see what happens there. Now, our conversation for today is on a statement made by the former Vice President of Nigeria, Professor Osinbajo, where he stated and said that at a recent African Leadership or Economic Policy Forum he said that economic growth figures, that's GDP expansion, do not automatically translate into improved living standards for citizens. He argued that development quality, not just growth rate, should be the true measure of progress in African economies. Now, some of the key points of what he said is that GDP is not a full measure of welfare, inclusive growth is crucial, structural transformation matters, governance and social investment, private sector and value creation, and of course the human development metrics. Now we have some pictures on the screen that we're going to be showing you to actually see and understand what the former president is saying. We're going to start off from 10 years ago, year 2015, GDP growth was 2.7%, inflation 9.0, unemployment rate 9.9, poverty rate 39 million of the 39% of the population. The Human Development Index was at 0.532%. Now there was pre-recession, oil dependence high, modest welfare progress. We see that for 2026, minus 1.6. Actually, the GDP growth went down. Inflation was 15.7%, unemployment rate 13.9%. About 43% of the population had poverty rate, 0.534% Human Development Index. 2017. The numbers keep increasing for inflation. At some point in time, it went down in 2018 to 12.1%. GDP improves slightly, yet inequality widens. To the next one, for 2019, 2.2 GDP growth, inflation 11.4, unemployment 27.1, and all that and all that. And we see that 2023, 2.8. Let's come to our current place where we are right now in the country, 2025, and we have been seeing a decline in our inflation rate. We're now at 18.0%. Unemployment rate has declined to 36.0%. Our GDP growth equally being touted by the Minister of Finance at the FEC meeting yesterday at 4.23%. Poverty rate is about 139 million people, about 50% approximately of the population. Human index is estimated at 0.542%. Now, is improving, but welfare stagnant, growth fastest in 4 years, inflation easing, but poverty persists. These numbers, in a way, agrees with what President Osinbajo says. But I'm going to ask you, Vice President Osinbajo says, do you actually agree with what the former Vice President has said?
No, what we are saying, we have been saying this for quite some time. Since 2004, we are telling them that indices are meant to guide economic policy. Indices on their own cannot provide the social safety net that's required for individuals. And it is established that for any economy to have a sustainable development, it has to have two-digit growth sustained for at least 10 to 15 years. That means that a country must have a sustained economic growth of nothing less than 2 digits, from 10 above, for consistently for 10 to 15 years. Then the poverty rate will reduce, the job creations will be improved, and Human Development Index will be cited to be improving. But in our own case, the managers of our economy are more interested in the numbers, because those numbers, we felt that is the creditors that are touting them to pursue numbers so that they will justify that they will be able to pay their loans, their loans that they have taken. So what the figures are showing is different from what you get in the economy, because people are in abject poverty. Even the numbers you are showing on the screen are doubted, because the last report by the World Bank themselves said 156 million people are in below the poverty line. So that means that what you are doing as a structural reforms are not bringing results. And you need to go back and look at the indices and say, what do I want? What do I want the economy to be? And in the current year, if you look at their analysis in terms of employment, it slides down. This is not because the economy is growing, but because they change the way they are identifying unemployment using the ILO convention data. That is to say, in ILO convention data, it says that anybody who has 2 hours job per week is employed. So at this time, it doesn't make sense in Nigeria to say anybody who had 2 hours job within a week is employed. These are things that can be contestable. And it's very clear that whatever you said about growth, it must be translated to human development index in your country. Do people, their livelihood improved, their access to social service improve in terms of electricity, in terms of malnutrition and the rest? And therefore, it is important to realize that indices alone does not provide the basic answers of whether the economy is making progress or not.
Okay, now you said something that's important. Let's stay on that. How then do we move from indices, macro growth, paper numbers, to actual realistic, tangible growth that we see on the street? That when you tell the average Nigerian on the street or the layman on the street, oh, GDP growth is at this is that, inflation is down, he says, oh yes, I understand, I can see it in my pocket. How do we transmit to that level?
Normally, in economic cycle, any policy you do today, you need to evaluate it. What is the target of the policy? For instance, if we take examples of from China, China said their own intent is to remove 100 million poor people out of poverty within a short period of 10 years. And in that, you have to make effort in terms of translating all the programs and projects that you are going to do to improve on the living standard of the people. For instance, if you want to say that I want to improve agriculture, you have to do a policy in which that the people that are in agriculture are having access, one, to the land, to finance, to implement, and to the projects. And therefore, the output will be improved from, say, 10 bags per hectare to, say, 100 bags per hectare. That will improve the income of the farmer. And therefore, that will impute also in the industry to provide the basis for industry in terms of power, in terms of level of taxation, in terms of human capital, the resource, that education sector can produce that manpower they require without necessarily investing that manpower to produce the goods and services. So in terms of policy, any policy you are coming out with must integrate within the culture and behavior and terms of the country itself, where people can be able to niche from that policy to improve their condition of service and in condition of living in any sector of the economy. But what we see over the years is that all the policies that come, most of them, they don't even the knowledge of the country. For instance, if you take social interventions that started in the last administration, because I look at this administration are one and the same, they have the same political party, same manifesto. If you look at that social intervention, they will tell you that they spent 100 billion on social intervention. But when you go down to assess who and who benefited from this system, you may likely not have a concrete data, because the data they are using is not their own data, is not generated from the country system, whereby every individual is captured within that context. But the creditors decide to give you a data and said, this is the data of the poor people in Nigeria. It may not necessarily reflect what is in the ground. So our policy are geared toward satisfying the creditors, not achieving what we are determined to achieve as Nigerians.
All right, now you're talking about policy. So let's see. Do you think it's high time to change the GDP and now maybe replace it with more like genuine progress indicator or actually human development index? Maybe if we have that change for policy evaluation. Would that help?
Yeah, to some extent. You know, they started in 2022. They commissioned a project to look at the multidimensional poverty of Nigerians. And from that multidimensional poverty in Nigeria, they have seen the figures are not relating to what they want to see. And they discarded from 2022 to date, they refuse to continue with those kind of survey. So it is important that any project, any policy that you are coming up with, in fact, even the infrastructure projects that you are undertaking, how important is it to Nigerians? For instance, take the most touted project of Lagos Calabar Coastal Road. It's going to spend about 16 trillion naira. How much would it bring in concrete economic activities within that coastal area? So there must be an evaluation. Economics is not done in a vacuum. All that you are going to do must be evaluated and concretely determine what are the output, what are the deliverables in such a way that you will be able to say, yes, this program is worth doing to provide the actual required objective in terms of reducing the level of poverty and level of unemployment in the land. And it's very important to say that the managers of the economies are either not knowledgeable on the area or they refuse to accept the reality on the ground. Because as it is now, you are going to the villages and telling them that economy has improved. What has improved about his own life? He don't have access to water. He doesn't have access to electricity. Even the electricity is now classified. That is a class A consumer, class B consumer. So the access to electricity is limited in class level. So these are things that we need to look at in terms of policy postulations and way forward in trying to understand what is happening.
Okay, just staying with your last statement on electricity, do you think that it will be best to, open it up and remove it from the classes? Let it go back to we're all paying the same amount for electricity, whether we're having enough or not. Do you think that this whole class A, or rather, band A to band E, is actually helping the power sector deliver its mandate to the people?
Yes, what I'm trying to say is that no matter how you do it, it is important people to have access to electricity. Having access to electricity, it means that more productivity can be composed from that generation. But there is generation and distribution because the people you give, you privatize those companies for, they don't have even competence to do that. And therefore, it is a political patronage that makes you to sell those companies to them. So there is nowhere in the country, in the world, where you said the segregation of class distribution of electricity helps the production process in any economy. But the essence is to have the availability of electricity that people can utilize to do production process. So it is not the structure. The structure itself is faulty and the operation is faulty. So there is no way you can produce within a minimum cost that is required to cover a cost of production within any system as it is in Nigeria. And it is very important to show examples from the world. There is no any economy in the world that developed through the Bretton Woods advice. For instance, when they talk about economic development, they normally mention China, Malaysia, Singapore, and other Latin American countries that have shown promise in development. But most of them have to jettison the neoliberal system and control the economy. And the most unfortunate thing about Nigeria, even the Nigerian constitution is violated in operating these kinds of economy. Because if you go to the objective principles of the Nigerian constitution, chapter 2, it stated that the Nigerian economy must be managed in order to allow the equality in the distribution of resources. But over the time, they don't follow that principle. Therefore, they only follow certain indices that could not provide some basis in understanding the basis of economic models.
All right, just before we go back to this GDP equivalent to leaving, is it your opinion that it's time that Nigeria, takes up its course, works its own economic policies out without having to, as you say, listen or turn the line of the Bretton Woods organization?
Yes, that's absolute. We have been saying this in the last 40 years, that look, there is no economy that survives with the Bretton Woods solutions. So why can't you? You have intellectuals, you have people who have shown promise, and even they were utilized by other economies to develop their economies. Why can't you bring these people on board and try to make it work for Nigerians, not for somebody else? Because the level of inequality in Nigeria is worrisome in terms of that they have and they have not. The distinction is so wide, and to the extent is now encroaching into the system. For instance, now, the local contractors in Nigeria have been crying out that they have not been paid their entitlement for the job they have done for quite some time. But when you look at the foreign contractors, they have been paid. Some of them even completely paid before the job has been done. So why the segregations in terms of your citizens and other citizens? I think these are things that the managers of the economy should look at it, because by the time you inject money on the local contractors, they will buy their products here and they will employ people within, and they will be able to pay to service their loans for those that are having loans to service.
Okay. Now, do you think or believe these are ongoing tax reforms, come January 2026, a new tax regime is going to take place? They keep saying that it's going to benefit the average Nigerian in the long run. But do you think that these tax reforms and this equality, this infrastructure drive that we're on, there's the coastal one, there's some roads being built in different parts of the country, do you think that it would actually drive and bridge the gap between growth and welfare?
As we always say it, growth is just a measure to measure the performance of economic activity within a specific period. The essence of that is to guide a policymaker to say that, look, what I have put in place as part of policy is working or is not working. And within that measure, it has been stated that, look, for you to benefit from growth to development, there must be a consistent double-digit growth in any economy for it to benefit from development. So it is that will be a guiding principle. It's not just growth thing, but it encompasses all other issues that will allow development to suffice, and also people to benefit from that activity, economic activities that is being taken in the economy. Yes, infrastructure is good, but what type of infrastructure? For me, if you said infrastructure, for instance, one, we have a problem of food security. How do I open the land and allow people to evacuate their product? Because the first harvest loss in Nigeria is about 70%. So how do I open the rural areas where the agriculture is going on to provide for that evacuations and provide a value chain through which economic activity can be enhanced? So in concrete terms, economic growth is just a necessary indicator, but not a sufficient indicator to say that there is development, as it were.
All right, now let's come back to the state and local governments, because every time we keep harping on the federal government. But what role can the state and local government play in transitioning national growth to community level prosperity? Because they are actually the ones closer to the people. There's so much the federal government can do if the state and local are not on board. So how will they come into the picture? What can they do to translate this growth to community level prosperity?
Yes, we can say we are talking about the federal government, but it is the federal government that muzzles the state and the local government. Let's take, for instance, the local government. Let me give you an instance. In the local government, when the local government are operational, they do their constitutional responsibility, rural feeder roads, constructions of markets, stores, and the rest. So at the end of any budget, they have programs and projects that they are supposed to do. And they will pursue those projects and programs they have with it. The contractors are coming up from the local government. They are local contractors. So they will award this contract to the contractors, and the contractors will now engage the villagers, the people from the local government, to construct those constructions they were given. And therefore, the income that generated by that construction is tied down to that local government. But in a situation whereby the entire local government allocation is now subdued by the governor, and the governor will give you only to pay salaries. And therefore, local government turns to only paying salaries at the end of the month. If you go to local government secretariats, you can only see people when it's end of the month to pay salaries. Apart from that, they cannot do anything unless what governor wants them to do. And he is the one that will give contract at the state level, not at the local government. He will send contractor to the state level. And therefore, the entire local government economic system is already grounded, because the activities of that local government is grounded because the state interest is already taken over those issues. The second thing is that in terms of ungoverned cases and the security challenges, when local governments were active, they will provide information and local information of what is going on to the state. And the state, anything that they cannot solve, they escalate it to the state. And when the state cannot solve, they escalate it to the federal. At that level, now the chairman of local government is appointed or selected by the governor, and he lives in the state capital. Most of them live in Abuja, so they will not even know what is going on in the local government because they are the governor's boys. So they will get the chairmanship without considering what are the important things they're supposed to do. So the local government can be functional unless it's allowed to function as is stated in the constitutional procedures. And in the state, because there is incapacitation in terms of the civil service, because the civil service, the training in the civil service, prior to this, the civil servant can tell whoever is the chief executive that is against the civil service rule to do A, B, C, D. I always cite an example when the Northwest state, when General Hassan was the governor, my God bless you. So he applied for a land in the state. And the permanent secretary in charge of land said, you can't apply of the land because you are the person that allocate this land. So by civil service rule, you can apply for a land that you allocate to yourself. Is it happening now? The governor has the entire land of the state, so he allocates who he wants, he allocates to whoever he felt
Okay.
that whether that land could be productively used. So these are kinds of the things, no matter how you do it, unless the constitution is upheld in terms of the separation of powers, in terms of the application of those powers in the state and the local government. And the federal government will disappear. They took
All right,
the
Professor.
state to the
Professor.
Supreme Court, and Supreme Court provide judgment. But the judgment has not enforced up to today.
Professor.
So these are kinds of things that we can.
Thank you so much. I can see that you have so much to say on the matter, but our time is fast spent and we need to make space for the next program, the news coming up at 12. Thank you so much for your insights on our conversation this morning. If GDP growth is equivalent to a better living, thank you, Professor Muhammed Muttaka Usman, Professor of Economics at ABU Zaria.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to have you.
And that's what we're talking about this morning. GDP growth, we keep citing the numbers. Does it actually translate to good and living, cost of living wage for Nigerians and all that, and generally around the world? And that's the much we have for you on the program today. I've been your host, Chiamaka Nwafor. Same time, same place next week. Bye for now.